We're getting ripped off. We're getting ripped off by Woolworths, and we're getting ripped off by the foodstuffs. They are fiscally raping us on a not even an hourly basis every minute that a supermarket is open in this country. And that's essentially what the Commerce Commission said yesterday. We have some of the highest grocery prices in the world. And the places that are higher than us, their people earn more. So it's sort of all relative. We spend now more of our weekly wage packet on food than we ever have in the history of New Zealand. That's worth thinking about. Or certainly since the statistics have been gathered anyhow, that there aren't any competitors flying to the rescue, that the Costcos of this world are losing money, so aren't expanding, and that the warehouse just isn't interested in raising the capital to go into it, and that the margin between what the supermarkets buy and what they sell it at is actually increasing. All right, so they're screwing the people who supply them. This is the Woolworths and the foodstuffs. They're screwing the suppliers, and then any gain they're getting out of suppliers, they're not passing on to the consumer. They're simply taking that as a profit incentive, while at the same time screwing the consumer as well. And that's why we're going to be talking to Andrew Bailey. There are calls for greater powers to get supermarkets competing after report. I don't know how that could be achieved. We've had the Grocery Commissioner on this show, and we've also had Grocery Action Group Chair Sue Chetwin on this show as well in the past, all bemoaning the fact that we are being absolutely eviscerated, or at least our wallets are, by the supermarket sector. The question is not that we don't know this. Although the Commerce Commission report, when you read it, and there you go, it's what I do in council meetings sometimes, aren't I naughty? And I have read it. But the thing about this annual grocery report is it crystallises completely the concerns that New Zealanders have, the things that we know. And in actual fact, at the last election, it was interesting that all of those parties that make up the centre-right, National, not so much ACT, New Zealand First certainly, identified rightly that grocery prices in this country were an issue that not only affected New Zealanders, but that we vote on as well. It's a voting issue for us. You can talk about all the periphery stuff if you like, all the sort of identity wars and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, New Zealanders have always tended to vote with their pockets when it comes to elections, and that's one of the reasons why National is leading this particular government. Joining us to talk about the report from the Commerce Commission yesterday, and what, if anything, the government can do, is Consumer Affairs Minister Andrew Bailey, and he joins us now. Andrew, lovely to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Michael.
Listen, mate, you've heard my intro. I read the grocery report or the first of these grocery reports from the Commerce Commission. And the thing that I was quite depressed when I got to the end of it, because I went, what's the solution when you've got a duopoly that has effective control and there are so few powers to be able to rein them in? Have you thought that as well?
Yeah, we've arrived at this destination through successive approvals that led to a consolidation in the industry that's happened over the last 20 years. So we've allowed this to happen over successive governments, and it is what it is. So the issue we've got now is how do we actually deal with that? So they like all things in life and business, the first thing we've got to do is protect, first of all, the consumer as much as possible to make sure they're not paying too much at the checkout counter, and they certainly are. The report points that. The second thing is how do we protect the existing competitors in the market? I'm referring to people like Costco, Warehouse, Night and Day, because let's just make sure that they can compete as much as possible. And then the third leg of the treble that I've been working on is how do we potentially get someone from overseas or a new competitor there's been talk of many people. But that's sort of the three legs or arms to it, and each of them have got slightly different strategies.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting I noticed in the wash-up yesterday, Andrew, was the concept of ensuring a maximum gap between wholesale and retail that could be potentially imposed on supermarkets. So whatever they purchase it for and whatever gains they might get, they are left with a maximum percentage before they can sell it to the consumer. Has that been in any of the documentation or draft advice you've seen?
You're the only person to pick up, and I must have done 10 interviews on the subject over the last couple of days. One of the things, and it's sort of written in slightly oblique language, but one of the things that the Commissioner has noted is he needs to understand what is the profitability of the supermarkets. And when they did the original report, they had a view on it, sort of slightly backed off it. One of the things he's said in the report that he wants to do is disaggregate the activities of the supermarket. So what I mean by that is a procurement function when you go and buy your goods from, veggie growers and pukekohe. You have warehousing logistics, you have retailing, and then you have other arrangements such as rental arrangements. Now, that activity, looking at the profitability of each of those activities, is one way of seeing where supermarkets are making their money, but also potentially, for instance, if you look at warehousing logistics, if we could work out that there was a certain price for what the supermarkets are charging suppliers for that function, you could, if that's transparent, you could go to people like Mainfreight and say, is that a competitive price? And try and bring some tension into it that way. So that's one of the things. But, the more fundamental things are, first of all, we've got to make sure that suppliers are getting a fair deal, and the Commissioner states that they're not, and anecdotally I still hear that they're not, and I've said to the Commerce Commission, I wrote in my letter of expectation to them, so I want them to be a courageous litigator. I want them to go and stamp out those poor practices so our suppliers, our veggie growers, whatever, get a fair deal. The second thing, if you want to support existing players, they need to be able to get access to products in an easy manner, and they need the full range, and they need it at the right price. Now, for instance, in terms of ranging, there's a new supermarket player in Hamilton. When I went to see them 6 weeks ago, they told me they can't get toilet paper. So that's a ranging issue. And so what he's going to look at is the ability for people to opt out of those arrangements. But the second thing is about the pricing. What prices do you have to pay at the wholesale level? And even when in the original report, I was in opposition, but I was saying you should be able to make sure that people can buy, these are the wholesalers, can buy the product at the same price that the supermarkets buy, and they often buy products such as their own home brand product at a lower price. And so the Commissioner has also noted that he wants to have a good look at that.
Okay. What it strikes me is that the pricing of supermarkets is still quite opaque to you, Andrew, as the Minister, and to the Grocery Commissioner. You actually need to have much more transparency. But how can you get that unless, well, I guess it's up to you, and that's where you come into this. Can you utilise legislation to make sure that everything is transparent?
No, he's got quite a significant amount of powers already, and he's going to unlock some more powers around the wholesaling arrangements. We talk about supplier arrangements, we talk about wholesaling, and we talk about retailing. But he's going to do what's called a Section 56 review. He's already nominated that. That'll unlock some other backstop powers. But where I can come in is I'm proposing to review the Fair Trading Act early next year, and I'm going to look at some of the penalties. And that may or may not, obviously, depending on the outcome of that. But that's where I can look at it. But in terms of powers, he's actually got most of those powers.
Okay. All right. So he can actually demand pricing structures and from supermarkets. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes. Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Okay.